We're live.
Okay, so this is Senate Institutions. It's Thursday, April 10th, and we're going to be hearing about water today. Total sections 9 and the Capitol bill. First, we're going to hear from DHCD. And do you know if you've been here before? We've introduced ourselves.
I don't think I've met you yet, Senator, except from the distance when I was in Newport a couple months ago. For the record, got sealed director for the Housing and Conservation Board. And everybody else I met in the act committee. I guess I'm not very memorable.
Be very memorable. Almost like when Gus comes to town.
Yeah.
He yells and brings all the people with him.
Go ahead and take it on.
Okay, and with me is our director of policy, Colleen Major. And we try to make sure that we were not repeating very much of what we said in the act committee, but for a couple of points we'll make over and over again, no matter what committees we're in. So I apologize in advance. I hadn't seen Senator Harrison this year, so I'm sorry she's not with us this afternoon. But briefly, we are in the Capitol bill for a couple of different reasons. And one of them is that every time the state has faced hard times, somebody's had the idea to put us in the Capitol bill. And I think that's because the benefits that we try to give Vermont last for the length of the bonds and longer. And that's the rationale for being in here. This is actually the smallest amount that we've been in the Capitol bill in many years. It's been recommended by the Clean Water Board and by the administration. And the administration shows that fund us our housing programs pretty fully out of the transfer tax this year. But I want to begin this presentation, and if you feel it's too repetitive, Mr. Chairman, please rush me along, just because in the year I began, Senator Mazza was in this committee with many of his years as vice chair. And this is a project we did in the village of South Hero, elderly housing, that he was just absolutely thrilled to see happen. The local group had worked for a decade for a site somewhere in the islands. And this really had there was an extension of the water line that made this project possible at all. And you can see it's right by the lake. It really created a village center for South Hero that it didn't have before. Fire station and a health center are just a 5-minute walk away, as well as a local store. So he was just really thrilled. And of course, he knew all the people who were part of the senior group who've been searching for land all those years. We are in the Capitol bill in terms of clean water, and a lot of our conservation work has water values. One slide ahead. Our statutory mission, and the statutory mission includes water quality now. That was explicitly written in, but as you get to know us, our work is not just about housing or conservation, but about economic vitality and quality of life. And this slide really had chair in mind, but I can show you pictures from any part of the state that would be similar in terms of impact. So the Brattleboro Food Co-op has housing above the co-op, and when we started, and it's right in the downtown, the co-op had to make a decision about whether to leave downtown or not. They thought they might, and their membership convinced them to stay downtown. And then they said we only need a 2-story building. They were in a kind of 1950s style strip mall set back on the river, and they restored the streetscape here. And then they built 2 floors above as affordable housing. And in fact, when the building opened, 3 members of the staff actually got apartments there. So they never would have an excuse to be late unless they got stuck in the elevator. But it won a national award for smart growth, this development. And the co-op, when we began that project, was doing $12 million of business. And the last time I checked, about 5 years after they moved into the new facility, they were up well past $20 million. So if you're in downtown Brattleboro, check it out. The Latches Theater is just down the street. It's an Art Deco theater and hotel that a family ran for many, many years. They ran out of steam and it was taken over by a local nonprofit who purchased it from them with our help as historic preservation. The Rebop Farm is a farm a few miles out in West Brattleboro that we work with through our viability and water quality programs.
That lodge is a theater. That's all that is a theater?
There's also a hotel.
Okay.
Hotel and theater complex. So it's a real major anchor for the downtown. And it was only being used for movies, and when the nonprofit took over, it's also now a place for live performance. So it's, again, when you think about this mission of economic vitality, though we funded it as a historic preservation project, it's an economic driver for downtown Brattleboro.
That's a beautiful building.
Yeah, it's a great Art Deco space. Conservation in the Capitol Bill is this year focused on clean water. Lots of our conservation projects have clean water benefits along with economic benefits. Lily Pond has about 7,000 feet of riparian protections at high elevations and a large wetlands complex. Mount Escutney, this was a project the town brought to us after the lodge had burned, and property values in the Escutney actually dropped. This is more than a decade ago by like 30%. And they said, we really want to have a town forest. We want to take a lesson from Kingdom Trails and bring people here to go mountain biking. And it's been a success. The New York Times actually had a story about it that was titled "A Town That Saved a Mountain and a Mountain That Saved a Town." So the economy's come back in that part of the state really well. And everybody I talked to, the representatives from that district, talk about how much the community uses the trails. They've restored a ski rope and all that kind of stuff. Getting to water quality, this is a farm conservation project with 130 acres of wetland. And as you can see, right on Lake Champlain. So really important to buffer here and to protect the wetlands. And this just gives you our sense of our work over the last 5 years in conservation, which includes lots of protection of wetlands and 53 miles of surface water protections just in those years from both farmland and natural area projects. This is a project we did just in the last 18 months, which is there's an island in Brighton State Park, and we help stay by the island rather than it being a private island, so people can boat out. I think that it's going to be open for camping at some point, and just a real asset to the park for it to be public space rather than private. This is a farm retirement project that we did with bond dollars. This was a farm on the Connecticut, Maidstone, with about, well, as it says, 183 of 198 acres were all in the floodplain. And it flooded so frequently that in recent years that it was not a place where you could make a good living as a farmer. So it's been taken over by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Nature Conservancy is going to do some wetlands restoration.
Yeah, no, where that is.
Walcott Community Forest is another conservation project with water quality benefits, including large wetlands, significant amount of floodplains, lots of riparian protections. This project was developed, or the chief advocate was actually the principal at the Walcott Elementary School. And there's trails on this land that abut the Memorial Rail Trail that this committee has put a lot of money into over the years. We're now working with Walcott on 2 historic preservation projects, one for the library and one for a visitor center on the trail with 2 historic buildings. That's going to give people a reason to stop in Walcott. Walcott is also one of those rural communities that's actually in the midst of trying to get a wastewater system developed to really help their village move forward. And for those of you who maybe hadn't been in Walcott, it's been a town where the economy's really struggled over a long period of time. It was a home of a very famous furniture company for many years.
Bring your Bucks Furniture.
Bucks Furniture,
Yes.
yes, and that's been gone since they've closed. There's really not been, until the rail trail, a reason to stop in Walcott. But some optimism there. And again, we think of the economy whenever we're investing.
What's the population?
Walcott, I'm gonna guess 800 per thousand.
Yeah, hit that. Yeah, hit that right on Route 15. Right in the Memorial River.
This is another farm project with water quality benefits. And this was also what we call a farmland access project. And big picture, since we changed our statute to put water quality in it, we've really focused on buffers that are twice the width of those that are required by the required ag practices. So they're 50 feet rather than 25. This is a farmland access project. The fellow here is a former Harvard Union hockey and baseball star who studied economics and came back because he missed farming too much. And we helped him acquire this 70 acres. And I think as we discussed in the ag committee, farmers are often using our program to reduce the cost of acquisition, usually by about 60%. This slide's about farm transfers. I'm not going to stay on this one very much, but you've all heard the governor talk about Vermont's demographic challenges, and you can see, and I see in my experience, lots of young people interested in getting into agriculture. And while much of it is diversified, the fellow on the right, Mr. Lucas, is a BTC graduate who leased a farm for 7 years. And then when he found he couldn't buy it, he made a deal with the Odette family, a pretty prominent Addison County dairy family, and he leased from them for 6 years. And last year, he was able to buy their land. So it's a tough thing for a young person to become a dairy farmer without coming from a family with assets, but he's really pulled himself up and done that with our support. We have a program that we discussed a lot in the ag committee called the Farm and Forest Viability Program. The keynote takeaway from this slide that I'll give you is of the 2024 clients, they were doing over $40 million in business and 319 jobs on their farm. And what this program does is both to help with business issues, but also to plan for water quality improvements. And I'll show you that in a moment. But here are the business results that we're seeing. And we also work with forestry businesses. So Morgan Maple Works is another example of a couple we've worked with over the years through the viability program to help them plan their business and improve their bookkeeping and financial skills. They began by buying the land in the early 90s, built a sugar house, eventually built their home there, moved there. It's just a great long-term success story. We're dealing with lots of climate resilience. Our staff visited this farm once a year. We take the staff out to visit projects. And that year we went to the Haven in the Upper Valley and then up to visit this farm in Norwich. And that day, the woman who gave us a tour of these beautiful, beautiful vegetable gardens and tomatoes tearfully said to us, "My husband doesn't want me to subsidize other people's tomatoes." And with the viability program, she's been able to make some business improvements. And 6 years later, our staff was just there about 2 weeks ago. She's going great guns and happy with her work-life balance and her income from the farm. And
what's the name do you remember the name?
Sweetland Farm, I
Yeah.
believe this is
Yeah.
I will double check my
I'll
notes,
send the contact there.
but I'm happy to, if you want.
Yeah, if you can,
sometime.
if you can send that for me,
Yeah,
that'd
yeah.
be great.
I'm pretty sure this is Sweetland Farm is the
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
Water quality grants are one of the things that you have been funding. This was the idea of former retired Representative Butch Shaw. And he felt that there were gaps that neither the EQIP program funded by NRCS or the Best Management Practices program was meeting. And so he asked us to set up a grants program, and we've done that, and along with the farm retirements for the water quality dollars. So the chart here just shows you what we've put in, what the Agency of Agriculture's put in, what EQIP has put in from NRCS and some other funding sources, as well to produce water quality results for farmers. So significant amount of leverage to make those improvements. And Hillside, Homestead, and Craftsbury, provide some of their milk, to Jasper Hill, and they've worked on upgrades. We gave them a $35,000 grant for a concrete manure stacking pad a few years ago, and I'll just feed you a quote from Renee, who's pictured here. She shared the new stacking pad is made our lives easier. There's no way we could have financed it on our own, even though it was needed. Day-to-day chores like moving feed and cleaning the barn has been much easier, and water quality wise, manure is staying where it's supposed to be. All of the leachate drains into the pit. Our goal is to keep the water as clean as possible and follow the regulations. And then she goes on to say, because water quality doesn't just pertain to people, everything utilizes it. If you take care of the water, it takes care of you in the long run. If we don't have water, we don't have cows to make milk. It all goes together. So she was very appreciative of the support we were able to give through her committee's efforts. I talked in the other committee about the Rural Economic Development Initiative at length. This is another example of a farmer who we worked with both on land access through the Development Rights Program, and then business planning, and then through the READY program, we helped him win a $114,000 value-added producer grant that I think without our help he would not have been able to compete for, though he's a smart fellow. Just time-wise, these grant applications from the feds can be pretty complex. This is some other examples of work we're doing across the state through the READY program. That's not what you're funding today, but I mention it because if you have constituents who have thoughts or ideas about how we can be helpful, and they live in a town of 5,000 or less, which is the cutoff under our statute for this program, you should tell them to make our phones ring. And we'd be glad to sit down and talk with them. And that's, as you can see here, a general store in Rupert, the library in Canaan won a $900,000 award. And this wellness center, which is part of the restoration of 4 historic buildings in Arlington, won a $250,000 grant with our help. This is just another example of one of the charges of this committee sometimes is around infrastructure. I know that the governor had some proposals that I think got moved into the big bill in the other body. But this is Guilford, Vermont, where the extension of a water line made this 17-unit affordable housing complex possible, and also gave the community for the first time a hydrant system, and could not have built a building of that scale in Guilford without that water system. Just wouldn't work financially at all. Just a few minutes on our housing mission, and this is what we've been up to since 2020. You're going to see the numbers go down in the next few years because the large amounts you were able to provide us when ARPA was a big thing and the state was running surpluses was really supercharged our work. Nevertheless, we still have some of this is yet to be built out. You'll see results from this work over the next 2 years, still as projects that are in construction or about to go into construction come online. But we've touched, I think, every part of the housing continuum from home ownership to accessibility improvements for people with disabilities to dealing with problems of addiction and farm worker housing. This is just one example in this last year of 100 new units in Hartford at 3 different locations. One's downtown, one's the conversion of a hotel into housing. And more on our downtown work. The governor was just at this building, which has not quite yet opened, right on Main Street, on Route 5 in downtown Windsor. The Bellows Falls Garage, a different example of the work we're doing. And this is the wide range of the housing programs that we offer to people. And, as I mentioned, as I was sitting down, we were up in Newport a few months ago for the groundbreaking for the first phase of the redevelopment at Sacred Heart. And there'll be a second phase. There'll be condominiums. But we've also done infill of mobile home parks in Derby. A big part of our mission is what's called permanent affordability. And we do that with home ownership as well as with rental housing. And people share the appreciation when they get a big down payment assistance grant from us. They agree not to take the full value when they go to sell. And that allows us to turn the home over from one generation to the next. So this home in Brookline is actually, was about an $80,000 home in 1992 that we gave a $13,000 grant to. And it's now been home to 4 different households over the ensuing 30 years. The last time it sold, it had a market value about 6 years ago of over 200,000 and it sold for 140 or so. And that's what we're seeing regularly is that homes that we subsidized in the early 90s often have values 240 to 300, and they're selling in the mid 100s without any additional subsidy. We like this policy because we think it does really important things for the state. It protects Vermonters from displacement. So the project in Burke was an elderly project, and in Burke, I think it could have been turned into some other kind of use. We added 8 apartments. We've let all the elders, we've made it possible for all the elders to stay. That's why we say it protects Vermonters. Middle picture is in Burlington, where the old Catholic diocese is. And this is a private sector led development, but we've funded 2 buildings there so far with about 160 homes. We're about to do a third at 4th building, another 70 homes. And if we didn't have protections that the housing had to stay affordable in a neighborhood like this, whenever the affordability restrictions came to an end, the housing would get converted and people would be displaced. This is right on the lake. And SD Ireland is actually building multi-million-dollar condos in the building closest to the lake. So it's the most mixed income community probably in the state. And then an example we give of how this protects your investment in us is that 35 years ago, we helped the state conserve a 336 unit rental development in Burlington, again, close to the lake in the north end, with $2.9 million. And if we had to replace it today because we didn't restrict its use, replacing 336 homes in Burlington today would be probably $180 million undertaking. So we think that there's an economic return that the state gets by investing through us. And even though you're focused on water quality for our funding in the capital bill this year, there's support of that because we have this dual vision will allow us to use the other funding we get to do more with housing. I'm going to finish this with flood resilience. This again is one example, but I could give you pictures in Central Vermont or Johnson. The whetstone is what David Dean used to call a dinky little brook. But when it rains too much, as it did in Tropical Storm Irene, that's what the picture on the bottom left is showing you is what a public housing development looked like. That development's been emptied out and replaced with 75 new apartments. The state's largest mobile home cooperative is also along the whetstone, and the summer 23 flooding damaged one of the bridges to the park that needed to be replaced. This year, we used some funding to buy this 14-acre parcel that Sursasimo Lumber owned in downtown Brattleboro. We got rid of the berm and took a lot of fill out. And the river scientists and Secretary Moore believe that this is going to greatly reduce flood damage the next time it rains too much along the whetstone. So we've seen that happen on a number of occasions. And that's the presentation today. The request is $2.8 million. 800,000 is for water quality grants specifically and for farm retirements. And the balance is to do conservation work that has water quality benefits. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Wow. A lot.
I hope so.
Any question?
I'm good. I always find it interesting. A lot of those projects I know about. It's always nice to see him. Yeah, always good presentation, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, folks.
Yeah.
good luck wrapping up the capital bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think next book for 2:15, so we'll adjourn.